good morning. We're going to get started. We had a last-minute cancellation from our scheduled pastor, but Councilman Larry McAtee has agreed to deliver our invocation this morning, and then following that, why don't we have Councilwoman, did you do it last time?
I think so.
Okay, how about Councilman Mark Stonecipher? Would you lead us in the pledge?
Let's pray. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to come before your throne of grace. Thank you for the way that you answer our prayer. Thank the way you have blessed Oklahoma City over the years, the leadership and the citizens working together. May this morning be another example of that as we do your business. May our words and our actions be pleasing to you. And we thank you in Jesus' name for the way you provide for us. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I call this meeting of the City Council to order, and we have a relatively light Office of the Mayor agenda, but we do have something, so I will head down to the podium. All right, why don't we start with the lighter item. It is the custom, can I get my ghost dog up here? It is it's one of the stranger things I've done yet as mayor. President's pardon turkeys. I'm going to issue a proclamation to a skeleton of a dog. So it is the custom here at City Hall for the mayor to proclaim the night that we as a community will participate in the annual trick-or-treat tradition. And so we have a proclamation to that effect, and it is also the custom that the Parks Department, occasionally accompanied by this little guy, Tramp, will accept said proclamation. Would the clerk please read?
Whereas Halloween is a time for jack-o'-lanterns and annual appearances of ghosts, goblins, and strange and mysterious creatures. Whereas our city's children celebrate Halloween by dressing in costumes and visiting homes in their neighborhoods to receive traditional holiday treats. The annual Halloween activities provide an opportunity for people in our community to become better acquainted. Whereas it is important to our community that children be allowed to enjoy these traditional activities, but that measures be taken to ensure the safety of the children and protect the rights of the homeowners. Now, therefore, David Holt, the mayor of the city of Oklahoma City, does hereby proclaim Wednesday, October 31st, as Trick-or-Treat Night in Oklahoma City, and he encourages children and adults to cooperate in limiting the time of activities to the afternoon and early evening hours, that households indicate their willingness to welcome their neighbors by turning on their porch and exterior lights, that youngsters only call on homes so lighted, and he asks the cooperation of all citizens, young and old, in making this a happy and safe occasion for all.
All right, well, very good. Well, we are joined by Melinda McMillan from Parks Department, who has nothing to say, but will gratefully accept this proclamation, and we wish everybody to have a great Halloween night this year. Thank you for bringing Tramp with you as well. All right. On a far more serious note, I would like Joanna Eldridge to join me up here. So, Joanna, you are, pending the vote here, you are our Teacher of the Month, and we are so grateful for all that you do. We're going to learn a little bit more about you, but it appears that this does not cover, I think, the most interesting thing, which is that you came to Oklahoma City, specifically Oklahoma City University, from Poland about 11 years ago. And we're going to hear more about your professional career as a teacher, if the clerk would please read this resolution.
Whereas Joanna Eldridge has been named Teacher of the Month for October by the Oklahoma City Public Schools and the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City. Joanna is a graduate of Oklahoma City University, where she received her Bachelor of Music in 2011 and her Master's of Music in 2013. She is currently pursuing her Master's of Education at the University of Central Oklahoma. While attending OCU, Joanna taught piano and French horn lessons for 6 years, and during her last 3 years there, she worked with a student with multiple disabilities, which set the course for her career path in special education. Whereas Joanna is in her 5th year teaching in the Oklahoma City Public Schools, all at Edgemere Elementary School, where she works with pre-K through 6th grade students, receiving special education services in reading, English language arts, mathematics, and direct instruction in adaptive and social skills. Since 2016, Joanna has been serving in the role of lead mentor teacher, supporting her colleagues' teaching practices in all academic areas, as well as in behavior management, positive behavior intervention strategies, and response to intervention process and procedures. Whereas to help her special education students learn coping skills, Joanna has implemented a meditation class. This will assist her students in the general education classroom and will improve their ability to learn and develop healthy relationships with peers and adults, both at school and in life. Whereas Joanna is working closely with El Sistema to provide students with disabilities the opportunity to participate in symphony orchestra while receiving private music lessons. She has found that students with disabilities who are in the program are not only progressing academically, but also socially and emotionally. Whereas Joanna believes that being a teacher is an amazing and extremely powerful task, and that teachers can change a child's life tremendously and have an everlasting impact. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Joanna Eldridge on her selection as October 2018 Teacher of the Month by the Oklahoma City Public Schools and the Rotary Club of Oklahoma City.
All right. Well, that was a great wrap-up of your career and all that you do for our community, and we're very grateful. We now have to have a vote on this, however, to see if you are really going to be the Teacher of the Month. And I believe Councilman Shadichi is your constituent. Would you like to make a motion? Got a motion and a second. If everyone would cast your votes. Passes unanimously. You are the Teacher of the Month. Would you like to say a few words? We would love to hear from you. It looks like you have prepared remarks. That's unique.
I promise I'm not Snapchatting. I just have some notes. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Mayor Holt. I'm pleased and humbled and honored to receive this award, and I would like to say thank you to everybody who voted on that and nominated me for that award. My mission in teaching is to spread vision that education can be a way to open many doors to many opportunities, and that's what I lived by, and that's what my father taught me, and that brought me across the world all the way here to spread that love and that mission. So I'm going to continue in this amazing city of Oklahoma City, and thank you again so much for this award.
Thank you. Let's show our appreciation again to Joanna. It's yours to keep. Thank you so much. All right, I'll make my way back to my seat. That concludes Office of the Mayor, which takes us to item 4 on our agenda, the Journal of Council Proceedings. I would entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That takes us to item 5, requests for uncontested continuances, and we already have on here 9A. Mr. City Manager, are there any others?
Just a few on page 19, under 9M1, 9M1, page 19, item B, 4,000 South Brookline, we asked to strike that item. The owner is securing. Item F, 4713 South Santa Fe, we asked that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item H, 620 Northwest 28th Street, we asked that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Item M, 736 Southeast 41st Street, we asked that that be stricken. The owner has secured. Moving to pay, or still on 19, item 9N1A, 4,000 South Brookline. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. Item F, 620 Northwest 28th Street. We ask that that be stricken. The owner secured. And finally, item I, 736 Southeast 41st Street. We ask that that be stricken. Again, the owner secured.
Okay. All right, moving on to item 6, revocable permits. We have item A, revocable right-of-way use permit with Capitol Hill Main Street to hold Haunt the Hill. Is there anyone here to speak on that matter? If not, Councilman Stone?
Thank you. I would move for approval.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 6B, revocable right-of-way use permit with Downtown OKC to hold Brick or Treat. Is there anyone here to speak on that? So, I know the play on words here, but it kind of sounds like if you don't get a treat, we're going to throw a brick through your window. But
Let's hope not. Good morning. My name is Riley Cole. I'm with Downtown Oklahoma City Partnership. We're hosting our 5th annual Brick or Treat Candy Hunt next Monday, the 29th, from 4 to 7, and requesting to close down Mickey Mantle just from alley to alley, Flaming Lips to Wanda Jackson.
very good. We've got a motion motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Have a great event. All right, we'll recess the council meeting and convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority, where we have items A through E. I would entertain a motion for all of them. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority and convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, where we have items A and B. I could take them all in one motion. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We will adjourn the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority, convene as Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust. All we have there is claims and payroll. We probably don't have to vote, but let's do it anyways. Is there a motion? Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the Oklahoma City Environmental Assistance Trust and reconvene as the council meeting, where we find ourselves on page 3 of your printed agenda with the item 7, the consent docket.
Move those items subject to individual considerations.
We've got a motion and a second, and I know we have a presentation on AO. That's the only scheduled presentation, right?
Yes, sir.
And is there any other council member who'd like to pull out any item for discussion? Or
I have a question on T,
T, okay.
and then just a comment on AG.
T and AG, okay. Anyone else? All right, well, we'll take them in order, which brings us to T.
T is the ballpark field replacement. The only question is, how often do we do that?
I'm not sure if we've done it before or not.
Okay.
We don't do it often.
Well, and then that leads me into, we just had a monster truck rally and bull riding on the field.
Yes.
And I was curious, so is this really it seems like this is going to destroy the field.
And that was okay because this is the year we're replacing.
So we're not going to have that same event next year.
I would think not.
I would think the Dodgers probably wouldn't want
Yeah,
that.
but I think this is the first time on the roof and it's the first time on the field too.
Right, okay. Thanks.
Yeah, no, they specifically scheduled that because they were doing this. So I hope you made it, because it was a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
All right.
All right, AG. That was you as well, Councilman.
Yeah, AG is, we're approving an allocation of $1.7 million in funds from the 2007 GEO bond for improvements to Piedmont Road or State Highway 4. This is an area that has had a number of accidents, and a lot of them have been fatal accidents, and so it is a cooperative agreement between the City of Yukon, Oklahoma City, and ODOT. So it's an ODOT project, but our portion of the project is $1.7 million, and it's mainly for getting right-of-way and relocating utilities. And it does say Ward 8, but it is Ward 1. So that's it.
Mayor, I forgot to mention AE, and if I could follow on that, because Eric's here. This is a similar project on Northwest 10th Street between Pennsylvania and May, and it's a partnership project along with ODOT, 2007 bond issue. It looks like our share is about $1.2 million, expected to begin in spring of 19. Eric, does this involve cleaning up that intersection at Virginia and Penn as well, or is that a separate project?
I need to look at that and get back to you to be sure. But this is an ODOT project, so as we continue to work with them, I can get some additional details and get that reported back to you.
Okay, I think the cleanup of the intersection may be in the 17 bond issue.
I believe that's also correct, and there's some things that we have done in the past year to try to redo some of the striping and some of the confusion that occurs at that intersection, but I don't know if this project does, in addition to what we've tried to address this past year, might be what's in that bond as well.
This is also an intersection where we're having some really serious issues with tents and camps, and
Yes.
and so I would hope that maybe holistically, as we look at this, we might be able to address some of those issues as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Well, that leaves us with AO. Now, this item was deferred from the last meeting. This was, as if I could distill the discussion, it was in the interest of not considering the river request in a vacuum, but looking at what the whole totality of requests for the MAPS 3 overage money includes. And so I'll turn it over to you, Mr. City Manager, to provide that information.
Thank you. Before you today, we have a copy of a presentation that was given to the council probably 5 or 6 weeks ago, and it was given before the subcommittee a month ago or so ago, or 3 or 4 weeks ago, and also before the MAPS 3 committee, which goes into great detail on each of the projects and each of the requests and where we're at financially and such. And we'd be happy to go through that today, although I thought we would start with a summary presentation on this. Mike Mize is here to go over a summary presentation on this. Well, we thought we'd start there, and if we need to go back into some more detail, we're prepared to do that and can do that. Councilman Greenwell was the one last week that asked that this be continued. Mr. Greenwell has contacted my office and said that he is okay going forward with it at this time. That being said, Mike Mize is here to go a little bit over the summary of where we are today, because we just want to make sure that everybody's clear of where we're at and the status of the funds on MAPS 3.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, Manager Couch. This is going to be a fairly brief presentation today. Really, the only slide that I have is the slide that you see before you now, which gives an overview of the remaining available excess collections. That's a number that's been determined by Craig Freeman and his office. The projected collections balance right now is just over $29 million. We anticipate that there will be $22 million available from convention center funds due to the very favorable bid that we received on that project. I need to note also that there's an $11 million project contingency for the convention center, which is not included in that $22 million. So the normal project contingency is still available for the convention center, aside from the $22 million that we show on the screen. So the total projected available funds is about $51 million. In the line items and the bullet points below that show the requests that have been made by the individual subcommittees. As you can see, that totals almost $61 million, which means if we were to try to fund all of those projects, we would have a shortfall of just about $10 million. So, be happy to try to answer any questions.
Mr. Mayor, if I could add a couple of points. The projected collections isn't just projected collections, that's also interest that's been earned over the life of the project, so that's why that number adds to that number or makes that number to the level that it is. And of the requests down below, those are all asks that have been uncalled. These are really everything that they've asked. And I just want to point out one of these because I think it's important. When you look at the trails and sidewalks, I think we've done some really, really good things with the trails and sidewalks, and there's always more to do on that. But when you take a look at that $13 million number, please remember that we have millions of dollars that are set aside in the Better Street, Safer City program, and we have millions of dollars that are also there in the GEO bond program. So it's not like we're not doing some significant things in that area already and have additional funding that can be used in that area. So that's just one thing, one point, just one point of the issues that are out there.
that actually was the point I was going to make, that this list of requests at 61 million is everything you could possibly ever think of that you might want that hasn't been completely vetted. So it does include an additional senior wellness center, and we haven't even yet broken ground on 2 and 3, and so...
3 and 4.
3 and 4. And so there are some things in here that might not be realized or might not need to be realized until sometime in the future. So that $9 million, $10 million shortfall is probably a little hard to get our arms around, too. I mean, I'm not sure that's really there.
Can you talk about the fairgrounds request? I mean, this is the only entity that has a dedicated revenue stream that has bonding capacity. So what is their $7 million?
David has a list.
I have this list.
Okay.
It's broken into 3 different levels, and in the first level there are 2 large LED screens that would be exterior on the building so that you could see it from the highway. There's some paving repairs. There's new power connections in the building. There's a full building sound system. What they have right now is just an emergency type sound system, and this would be a higher fidelity sound system. The columns in the front entry area are steel panel, if you will, and they're looking at maybe beefing that up and making it look nicer by doing rock on the cover and just making their entry better. Some wayfinding, some awnings, some LED lighting upgrades, just some things like that is in their first priority. Their second priority has got some equipment, forklift to help them move the massive amount of chairs that we bought out there, some golf carts to get around that building easier because it takes a long time to walk from one end to the next. So some things like that. And then in the third tier, there's some access control, just some miscellaneous stuff. It's only $262,000.
And all of that is for the new Expo Center?
It is, except for the wayfinding. The wayfinding will probably be in the immediate area outside.
Right. But they can't knock out some of that with their sizable allocation of the motel tax?
You know, there's choices to be made. They do have, obviously, a hotel-motel tax stream that they've been used to do improvements out there, so you're not wrong on that. They have some other desires. I think you know that they have desires to replace the arena out there, which is in bad shape, and so if you use it for that, you're going to have less of that money that's available for the arena in the future. So it's
Where are they on their revenue, their bonding capacity? I mean, are they maxed out? Or
no, they're not. They are not maxed out.
Okay. How much capacity do they have? I mean, ballpark or?
Well, I hate giving that. I'm not sure if Craig Freeman or Kenny Sudel might be in the back room.
Okay, it doesn't.
I'd be happy to go back to you on that.
Whenever.
Great.
You know, I had the privilege of serving on the sports oversight facility some time ago when we built the practice center, and we were not in this enviable position of having excess money and had to do a tremendous amount of value engineering on that project. And it sure is nice to be in a place where we can look at adding additional amenities, and in my opinion, most particularly things that will enhance revenue opportunities for these projects to help everybody get on financial footing because they don't have individual revenue streams the way some do.
Talking to Councilman Greenwell, his concern was making sure that this is not viewed as a first-come, first-served scenario, that we have priorities onto this. And I think he became more comfortable when he realized that that isn't how this was done, and that there is some seasonality and some reasons to do this because of getting some things done over the winter with the boathouse.
What about, I mean, we have no, I mean, there's no legal obligation to spend this on these necessarily these 6 projects, 2, 4, 6. I mean, if the city has other capital needs, you could spend a portion on anything, correct?
It would be you would have to change the MAPS 3 resolution of intent to do that. But it's a resolution, it could be done.
Right.
I think there would be a question, a bigger question, whether we're changing the philosophy and the spirit of which those monies were intended. But that's a policy issue for council.
But the voters on the ballot voted for 1% for capital improvements.
Correct. Just a question of the legality, yes, you're correct. You could spend it on...
None of these items were on the ballot.
Correct.
That's correct.
It's just that the council had a resolution that said this is what we're going to spend the monies on.
Correct.
Right, I mean, that ballot item was backed up by a list of projects that we said we would complete.
Which we have.
Right.
Right? So now we're doing add-ons to things that we've completed with excess funds.
Well, or things that were...
Well, I think every one of these is a little different answer to that question. You know, like I think Union Station being in the park is not being touched would be an incomplete park. You know, the fairgrounds sounds a little shakier to me. Feels like we've completed the Bennett Center. You look at something like the senior wellness centers. We did promise 4 or 5, so a 5th senior wellness center seems to meet some of our promises to the voters. So I think it's a different answer to every question here in terms of whether the project is truly complete to what was promised in 2009. But to your question about the legality, sure, you can spend on any capital project in Oklahoma City, but I think if you go beyond the scope of what was promised in 2009 to something totally off that list, you do run into, I think, a moral issue with the voters, the compact that we made with them.
Another example would be the Senior Wellness Center number 1 in my ward. And, you know, by the end of last year, we were hoping to have 1,000 members. And today we have over 5,000 members. And so there's inadequate restrooms for females, inadequate showers for females, same for the males, inadequate parking. People are having to park over in the church and walk to the wellness center. And so I think we're carrying the intent of what the voters voted for example, on that project, to try to enhance it so we have adequate parking and adequate restrooms and bathrooms.
Okay. Yes, Councilman McAtee.
From time to time, I receive questions, and I'd like an official answer. The question goes something like, we know we need money for our schools, and our teachers need more money for salaries. Why don't you direct, quote, this money, unquote, for those uses? How would you respond to that?
Well, the response to that was, one, is that this was for capital dollars, and that was what was voted on was capital dollars, and those are not youth capital dollars. So that's the first issue. The second issue is that they're one-time dollars. And even if you could do that, it may not be fiscally responsible to do that because you could do it once, and then you've just dug yourself a hole for future years.
So we're kind of on a subset of the discussion that's related to the item on the agenda, which is the totality of the requests. And for that purpose, David and Mike are here. Is there anything else we want to discuss with them, or do we want to kind of focus back on the river item, which is what's actually in front of us?
I guess the one question I would have is, what's the timeline for coming back to us on these other things?
I'm going to be presenting a detailed timeline to the advisory board this week that shows all of these projects and their times, because the discussion with the advisory board has been, most of them want a new wellness center. Some of them are maybe not in favor as much, but now's not the time because we still have 2 to build, so that might be pushed off to 2020, somewhere in that area. So this plan will spell all of that out so that you can make that decision of whether there'll be a wellness center at what I feel like is the appropriate time.
Okay, any other further questions for David and Mike on this topic of all the requests? Okay. Well, then let's kind of see where we want to go on the river item. It is, of course, it's on the consent docket, so it falls under everything else. There's already a motion on the table, but all right. So any further discussion on this topic? All right. Well, then we'll move forward. We've got all of the consent docket items now, and anything else that anybody wanted to pull out? All right. Any further discussion on any consent docket items? All right. Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right. That brings us to the concurrence docket. Page 11, item 8.
With those items subject to individual
Second.
Got a motion for items A through I. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to item 9 on page 13, items requiring separate votes. Item A was already deferred at the beginning of this meeting, which brings us to item B, ordinance on final hearing. This was recommended for denial from the Planning Commission. This is, and Bob's going to, let me just read it real quick. PUD 1687 at 1000 East Memorial Road. And Bob, you have something to say?
Yes, the applicant called our office a few minutes ago and asked that this be deferred till November 20th.
Okay. November 20th. All right. We would need a motion and a vote for that deferral.
Kenny, I have a question. The applicant is a client of my law firm, and so can I move to defer it, or should I recuse myself?
It'd be best to recuse yourself since they're a client of your firm.
I'll recuse it this time.
All right. We'll pause for a moment.
I'll make the motion that we defer this item to November 20th meeting.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second to defer the item to November 20th. Any discussion on that? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, we're now on item C, 9C. This is a public hearing at first in relation to a resolution adopting and confirming an assessment role for the next year for the Western Avenue Business Improvement District. Under item 9C1, is there anyone here who wishes to speak under the public hearing portion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion on 9C2, the resolution. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9D, ordinance on final hearing, adopting and ratifying the assessment role for previously mentioned Western Avenue Business Improvement District, et cetera. I would accept a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9E1. And 9E and 9F are related. These are sometimes known as the Airbnb ordinances. And I know that Councilman Stonecipher has some thoughts he wanted to share and perhaps even a motion.
We've had several meetings to discuss the ordinance and trying to make changes to the ordinance that would satisfy several different groups. And we are continuing to have those discussions. And so I have been asked to move to defer this to the November 20th agenda.
Okay.
And that would be for E and F.
Okay. Can he do one motion for both? Okay. All right. We've got a motion and a second to defer items E and F to November 20th. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9G, ordinance on final hearing relating to, this is the adult novelty ordinance. This is the final meeting. We've had this on twice previously. We have the option of going into executive session if need be. It appears that Eric Groves would like to address the council on it, and
yes.
I think this would be the time for that.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the council. I'm joined today by Mark Henriksen and John Coyle, who represent enterprises similar to the one I represent. I'm going to ask that this be continued because we are missing Councilman Greenwell and Councilman Cooper. I think I know how the votes are going to fall on this, and without those two members of the council, we may not have 5 votes to pass this. Anybody disagrees with me, let me know. But I think there's a majority support for this ordinance on the council. But the council members have to be here to vote.
Okay. Well, you would need a motion and a second, and then a successful vote for a deferral. So, I'll entertain.
To November, whatever says 2 weeks.
Okay.
That'd be good.
I'll second it, and I have a question about the wording.
Okay.
Do we need to vote first, or can I ask?
Well, I mean, to be strictly...
Ask it first. Ask it now?
Yeah.
Okay. There's a line in there that we're adding. It says, regardless of whether or not an establishment is an adult novelty shop, no adult novelties shall be displayed in any windows on the premises visible by the public. I think this idea is good, but my question is about the word displayed. Does displayed just mean seen, or does it actually have to be close to the window for it to be displayed?
It'd be in the window, and you could see it. In other words,
but what if it was 10 feet back and you still could see it from the window?
We are amenable to a change in the language if the municipal councilor thinks it appropriate to make it clear that they cannot be seen.
Seen, yeah.
I think the drafter of the ordinance intended that it not be seen and displayed, but between now and 6 November, if it's permissible.
I would be more comfortable with it if it said seen.
Can we do that, Mr. Jordan?
yes, it could be shall not be displayed in a manner visible to the public, or something like that.
James, is your concern that the windows are open and basically you can just see the entire store?
You can see the entire store, right.
Right.
One particular one?
Yes, that can be, we'll do an amendment.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, to accomplish that, and you could adopt that at final hearing.
Okay, thanks.
But we will still hear it on 6 November. Yes, I mean, we don't have to go, okay, great.
Yes.
Right, if that passes, but yes. Okay, we're actually on the motion to defer. We had a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes 6 to 1. So the motion carries, and the item will be deferred to November 6th.
Thank you. We'll see you on the 6th.
Okay. That brings us to 9H, public hearing regarding ordinance relating to vehicles for hire and other transportation services. This is the second of 3 times this item will appear on our agenda. This relates to streetcar. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak under the public hearing portion? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9I. This is the first of 3 times this item will appear on the agenda. This is the ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing November 6th, final hearing November 20th, relating to alcohol beverages and Low Point beer, etc. And I believe Chief City is here to brief us on this.
Thank you, Council. I think as everybody knows, as of October 1st, the state statutes on alcohol have changed. The statutes changed October 1st and went into effect then. The ordinance, and Orville Jones did a lot of work on this, did a great job, did a lot of work trying to adapt it to what the new state statutes now are going to say. And most of this is basically just incorporating the requirements and regulations that you'll find in this new state statute so that the city can enforce those laws also and hold the licensee, obviously require the licensee to adhere to those regulations. So basically, some of the main highlights in those regulations, it's first important to note that there is no more beer. I mean, there is beer, but beer is beer, wine is wine, alcohol, it's all the same because there's no more 3.2 beer. There's no low point beer addressed in our ordinance or in state statute anymore. It's all over that. It doesn't exist anymore. So the state now, Able Commission actually does all the licensing. They license everything. Where we come into play is where they have to present, before approval, present that license, that license or that, the applicant making the license to the city, and that we'll look at to make sure that it complies with all code requirements, zoning requirements, no history of the licensee, background, that kind of stuff, of felonies, past violations. We get to look at that, and then we can object to that before they issue the license, so that we have some inputs, because we do not issue the license. It's all state. The requirements in the new law allow us to hold the licensee accountable to all those regulations, and if there are violations, enough violations that our ordinance allows us to appeal, just like the state law allows us to appeal to the Able Commission for a revocation. And they can revoke that license based on our appeal if we've gone out and we've found numerous violations and they're continuous. This also allows for the city, once they have the license, if there are a number of violations, and they already have the license, then we can appeal to the Able Commission to revoke that license based on numerous violations. It also allows the city legal staff, based on the police chief's request, to appeal any decision that we disagree with on the Able Commission to district court. The state law allows that. Our ordinance incorporates that so that we can do that, which can be important because if we find enough violations they've already given a license to, then we need an ability to appeal those types of things. Those are some of the basic highlights. There's things in there about closing times and things like that, new closing times for package stores versus clubs and things like that. Package stores, they can basically, the language in there, and it's also in our ordinance, the state statute and ordinance, package stores can sell from like, I think it's from 6 a.m. to midnight, where a club, it's from like 8 a.m. till 2 o'clock. They have to completely close their club at 2 o'clock. They can't even be open. They have to stop serving and shut down their clubs so that we don't have people that are inebriated and they can lock their doors and start selling. So I think it's a good rule that the state put in their language, and we've adopted that to help us enforce it. So those are some of the highlights. If there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions for Chief C? Okay. Well, thank you, Chief. We do need to have a motion to introduce the ordinance for consideration. So,
move the item.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 9J. This is also making its first appearance of 3 on our agenda. Ordinance to be introduced, set for public hearing November 6th, final hearing November 20th, relating to businesses and general schedule of fees, etc. And I believe Eric Winger, our Public Works Director, is here to make a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're happy to present to you today an update to our pre-qualification review ordinance. This is an ordinance that was actually originally and last updated in 1997, so it's been some time, and there are just some things that have changed since. One of those would be the fees. Some of those would also be some of the pre-qualification categories. So to give you a little bit of a brief background, the reason for the creation of the pre-qualification ordinance was to assure that we had contractors working predominantly on public work that had gone under some type of review and compliance process before they actually were able to perform that work. And so we do contract with a number of contractors, not just on public projects, but there's a lot of private contractors too that do work in the public right away. So there's a number of categories that were created in 1997. They generally encompass anything that is road, bridge, sidewalk, water, and sewer. There's some other categories as well, but as you think about public work, this is not something that replaces the building code or the building code inspections. It's strictly for a lot of the public utility work. But since that time, the board, which serves, meets once a month. We review applications. There's an annual renewal process for contractors that's been well organized. We have all the contractors that are participating that do those annual reviews. It includes both in-city, out-of-city, and out-of-state contractors. But with that, we've got a number of changes that we need to present to you today. So this is the introduction of that ordinance. One of the biggest changes is that we're ready to add some additional categories. The categories are actually included in the ordinance now, so the only way to change those is to do ordinance revisions. What this update will do is actually move those categories to be a process of the actual board that meets monthly. So if you look at the document that was attached to your council item, you're going to see that those categories and the specific classifications have been stricken with the idea that there is a new document that creates those categories that's then managed by the board. So if we have a change, the board can then review and make those changes without having to actually update the ordinance. We're also looking to add some new categories. We're also looking to combine the licensing and the application process to make that one process. You also see that there are updates for the fees. And so the fees also have not been updated for many years, and those costs for the reviews and the cost to actually do that work have increased. We've also included an annual increase that's based on the CPI index. This would be similar to what Public Works has done on some other fee proposals, whether it is fees in lieu of, the drainage utility, and some of those others that are part of city renewals. With that, we've had a lot of interaction with several city departments, so a lot of my appreciation goes out to the Municipal Counselor's Office, to Craig Keith, to Haley Rawson, to some of our own Public Works staff. They've spent about a year preparing this ordinance for your consideration today. The Pre-Qualification Review Board met this month and recommended that the council receive it today as an introduction. Obviously, there will be 2 additional public hearing in about 2 weeks, then a final hearing in about a month. And I think with that, I can answer any questions you might have about pre-qualification for Oklahoma City.
I just have one question. How did you arrive at the rate increases on those? Because it looked like, basically, it looked like all of them doubled.
So one of the things is that the licensing fee, which used to be a separate fee, is now combined with the application fee. So both are being now taken at the same time. What you would find previously is there was an application fee for pre-qualification. When the contractor was approved, they then went to development services and then paid a companion licensing fee. Both those fees are now one fee, both received at the time of the pre-qualification application. It's really to streamline that process. It also helps us have the same anniversary date. So we were finding in previous years that the license might not be renewed at the same time of pre-qualification. And it caused some challenges when we were actually trying to make sure that we were managing work and having both pre-qualified contractors that were also licensed to do work in the city. That's probably the biggest increase. One of the things you'll see is that the out-of-state fee has dramatically increased. Something we used to provide with Public Works and the staff that oversee the pre-qualification is actually on-site visits. With the need for possible out-of-state travel, one of the reasons that the out-of-state fee is higher than the in-state fee is to provide for those travel expenses is we look to actually ramp up, making sure that those applicants are actually who they say they are, that they're actually operating the business that they've applied for before we approve them.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Eric?
Second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second to introduce the ordinance for consideration. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Thank you, Eric. That brings us to 9K. This is also the first of 3 meetings. This will appear on the agenda. This is amendments to the Downtown MAPS Economic Development Project Plan. It supports the development around the site of the AICCM. This was discussed a little bit at our last meeting. Of course, this schedules a public hearing November 6th, the final hearing November 20th. We have a presentation on this?
We do not. We had a presentation 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
I do want to point out that at that meeting, we did call for the TIF review committee to convene. They did convene, and last week met and reviewed it. And we had a new member this time that's not been in a TIF review committee, and that was the Crooked Oak Schools. Okay. And so they participated, and it was voted on unanimously at that point in time. And so, again, this is the first of the 3 meetings that we will have to actually create the TIF. I do want to point out that it does have a sales tax provision part of it, but that will be reviewed on a project-by-project need, and so that you will have future, even after it's created, you will have future opportunities to decide whether or not to participate in the sales tax portion.
Okay. Any questions on that item? I would entertain a motion. We need to approve its introduction. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. All right, that brings us to 9L. These are dilapidated structures. Item L1 is a public hearing regarding the 5 dilapidated structures on today's agenda. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for item 9L2, a resolution declaring that the structures are dilapidated.
Move the item.
Second. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Now we have item 9M1. This is a public hearing regarding the unsecured structures listed on the agenda, except for the 4 that were stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on these items? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9M2, the resolution declaring the structures are unsecured.
Move the resolution.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9N1, this is a public hearing regarding the abandoned buildings listed on the agenda, except for the 3 that were stricken at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9N2, the resolution declaring that the buildings are abandoned.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. This brings us to 901. This is a public hearing on 902, which is a resolution approving an allocation of Northeast Renaissance Project Increment District Number 9 funds for Northeast 23rd and Coltrane Multifamily Project, $2.5 million in Ward 7. There was a bit of a discussion and presentation on this at the last meeting. Maybe Councilman Cooper, you want to kind of lead this?
Yeah, if there's no discussion, I move for adoption.
Okay. Is there anyone here, since there is a public hearing, I always like to say the magic words. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Okay. We've got a motion.
Second.
And a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilman Shadid, I see you reaching for your button. Oh, you're voting. Okay, got it. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 1.
Well, but this is just the public hearing.
No, we just approved the allocation.
Oh.
We can call for a revote.
Can we call for a revote?
Absolutely. A motion and a second would be in order for a revote. Okay? Second. All right. Very good. Well, let's do a revote on the item 902. And sorry if I was unclear. This is the resolution approving an allocation of $2.5 million in TIF number 9. Okay. Any further discussion? All right. Now we'll vote again. Okay. You probably want to go red. 6 to 2. All right. Passes 6 to 2. Okay. That brings us to item 9P. 1 is a public hearing regarding 9P2, which is a resolution amending the June 13, 2017 City Council resolution approving certain fire-listed projects. Obviously, I think we heard a little bit about this at the last meeting.
This has to do with salaries and with the contract amendments and the sales tax that passed through and where we ended up. We pay for a number of uniform positions out of the sales tax, and this is to adjust that for the salary adjustments.
Okay. So this is the second public hearing under item 9P1. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion for 9P2, the resolution. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9Q, MAPS 3 streetcar stop naming agreement with Campbell Art Park, LLC. Revenue of $31,393.92. Mr. Couch, do you want to explain this?
David, do you want to take this one? We have an opportunity to have sponsorships for some of the streetcar stops. This is one of those.
Right, and this is the money that Campbell Art Park is paying back to us to do some changes to the stop name, and as the streetcar approaches the stops, you'll hear it say, "You're now approaching Campbell Art Park," and that was the cost to do some of those changes to get them what they wanted, because we'd already done a lot of the work.
We've got a motion and a second.
And it will be called Art Park. Okay.
All right. Any discussion?
So can this be a source of revenue for other streetcar stops?
David, did you hear the question?
Right.
Embark is working on a plan for sponsoring and doing advertising at the various stops. This was really a cost associated with those recordings and the graphics that were already up there, and as they wanted to change them. But yeah, there are opportunities for Embark to have some revenue at the stops and also in the car.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? We have a motion, right? Yes. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9R, resolution adopting a corrected management, administrative, and technical support classification list, etc.
At the last meeting 2 weeks ago, we adopted several plans, one for the ASME, one for this one for the auditors and municipal counsel's office. In the specific one for management, administration, and technical support classifications, some classifications were left out. So this is just to correct that.
I'd move the item.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9S1, resolution approving the request for salary continuation for Corporal Timothy Chisholm. Do we need an executive session, Kenny, that you know of? We do not. I'll entertain a motion.
Move the item second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9T1, resolution approving the request for salary continuation for Major William Fulton. Do we need an executive session, Kenny? I'd entertain a motion.
The item.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. 9U1, resolution authorizing Richard C. Smith and Sherry Katz, Assistant Municipal Councilors, to represent and defend city employee William J. City in the case of Pigeon v. Sweeney. Do we need an executive session that you know of, Kenny?
No.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 9V, enter into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations for the existing fiscal year with the FOP and the firefighters. We would need a motion to go into executive session. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll handle that at the after the other business. 9W1, claims recommended for denial. We've got A through G. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? I would entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. I don't believe we need executive session, so we'll proceed. If any further discussion, seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. That brings us to 10A1, claims recommended for approval. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I don't believe we need executive session. I would entertain a motion. Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. And in Holt mayoral term record time, we are now at item 11, just in case anyone's keeping track.
Mayor, you should have said that after items from council.
Yeah, right. Yeah, now they're gonna milk it. All right. Item 11. Items from council. We'll start down here, Councilman Greiner.
I just have one comment. I got to address certain things before my term is over. But going back to,
is it all spaced out? Is it kind of? Do we have it all?
Yeah, I got certain things I got to get covered. So you introduced your maps for seeking public comment for the public, which I appreciate. The comments today that we have a moral obligation to spend the fund to honor our resolution and do these 7-8 projects that were outlined to the voters, that it's the spirit, that's the policy of the council, that we can only use it for those things. To me, it's always bothered me that it's really constitutes log rolling. That if you're saying that the policy is that we can only spend it on these 7 or 8 projects, then basically you're giving what the Supreme Court has called an unpalatable choice to the voter, where they may have to vote for one thing they don't like in order to get the thing that they do like. And it's an all or nothing, unpalatable, all or nothing choice. And as we get ready for MAPS 4 and we roll this out, I just ask that the council think about that. I mean, I won't be here, but I'd ask that the council think about that. I mean, people have talked about a stadium. Are you going to make the voters vote for a stadium that they don't want because they get, I don't know, a senior wellness center that they do want? I mean, it's just, when we do our general obligation bonds, we have like 13 different votes. We let people vote separately on 13, 14 different things. Why not let the voters vote on everything separately and tell us what they do want and what they don't want? But I think that when you do it, even if it's a resolution and it's not actually on the ballot, you're basically saying, tax yourself for these 7 or 8 projects or none of the 7 or 8. I mean, it's an all or nothing. And that's just, it's always bothered me for the last many, many years, and it'll bother me in the next year. So I just want to give voice to that. And I'm certainly not the only one that thinks that. There have been cases that, you know, Supreme Court has ruled on this over and over. The legislature has done like bonds, where they'll have 3 different sources for the bonds, and the Supreme Court has said, no, just because it's bonds, you can't then separate it into 3 different things. And I think the same thing applies here. Just because you're saying it's for capital projects, you can't then divide it into 7 or 8 completely different projects and then say, well, it's just for capital, so it's one subject. The bottom line is it's never really been tested in the Supreme Court, and so I don't know that anybody knows the answer definitively, but there's enough there that it's certainly worthy of thinking about. Are we putting the voter, are we making the voter have an unpalatable all-or-nothing choice? Thanks.
Councilman McAtee? Councilman Stone?
Just want us to be mindful of the fact that this is Breast Cancer Awareness Month and also Domestic Abuse Month. And so we're yellow. I'm in a thinking honor of that.
Just briefly, I wanted to thank the council today for approving the park that's going to be built in Ward 8. That's been about 2 years in the works, and I'd particularly like to thank the Park Commission and Alan Payne, the chair. I'd like to thank Tim Smith and his group that we've worked on this for a long, long time. I'd like to thank Doug Cupper, the Director of Parks, and I'd really like to thank Dan Brummett, who helped draft the agreements that were executed. It's been a lot of work, but it's been a lot of fun work. Thank you.
Okay. That brings us to item 12, City Manager Reports, and I think we're actually going to do some of these today.
In interest of time, as we have 2 o'clock meetings, we did cut some reports over the last few weeks. One of the most important ones is the capital improvement plan that we did not hear and need to hear. And so we're going to start with that one today. And with that, Doug Dollar is here to kick off the capital improvement plan presentation.
All right, several weeks ago, we introduced this 5-year CIP plan. It totaled $3.1 billion. We introduced that plan. It's been to the Planning Commission as well. They're reviewing that, and their recommendation is coming back to the council. Normally, we have several departments present their plans. That's what we're going to be doing, some of that today. And then at the next meeting, we'll have the plan for your adoption as well as the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And so to start off today, we have the Parks Department, followed by Utilities and Public Works.
Seems like the Double D show, Doug and Doug. Doug Cupper, Director of Parks and Recreation, for the record. You will find our capital, 5-year capital plan on page 72 in the document. I do want to say that City Manager Couch would not allow me to ask for the whole $3.3 billion, so we tried to get it down to the...
And that is correct.
something more manageable. We used the Parks Master Plan. The Park Master Plan was actually created in 2013 and 14. It was adopted by the City Council in April of 2014, and it's kind of our for lack of a better term, a Bible that we try to manage all of our activities in conjunction with. It's actually part of Plan OKC as well. I do want to state there are 6 manifestations that the stakeholders and the citizens requested. They want us to maintain and improve the physical assets of existing parks. They want us to develop facilities and programs in existing parks to meet community needs. They wanted us to improve access to existing parks, promote and increase awareness of the value and economic impact of parks, develop new parks and facilities, and establish agreements and standards for private parks and school parks. I do want to point out that we have worked on all of these, but the last one, establish agreements and standards for private parks, that bows to the existence of our impact fees and how we are managing those and helping developers create opportunities within their subdivisions in creating new green space, open space, and we are working with them, and it's been a good partnership thus far. We are requesting over the next 5 years $91.8 million. It's broken down by year there. 2019 and 2020 is one of our larger ask years, and as we go to the next slide, you can see how it's kind of broken down. Park improvements, 33.2. Obviously, I don't need to read them. You can see for yourself what we're asking for. The big thing is the citizens want us to maintain what we have, and we need to reinvest in those existing parks that we have, the 164 parks that we manage for the citizens of Oklahoma City. We have almost 100 miles of paved trails now, and as City Manager Couch mentioned earlier, we've got funding in the 2017 GO for trails. We also have in the neighborhood and community enhancement funds, we have funds there. Those primarily are used to, in a lot of cases, to build new parks. We need to make sure that we have funds available to maintain what we have going forward. Some of that's being handled by the enhancement tax. We're right now under construction for revitalizing the Burke Cooper Trail up in Lake Hefner. It's being resurfaced, and we're anxious to get all of our trails rehabilitated. Projects by type, you can see it's broken down. The majority of the funding there is park improvements to the existing parks. As I said, currently we are at 164 parks if we count Scissortail as one of our newest assets. We will be at 165 once the deed and titles to the lands that you approve the purchase of and the donation of today. We'll be at 165 parks. We want to make sure that we can take care of those. All told, though, if we talk turkey as we get close to Thanksgiving, we manage 26,000 acres of recreational lands. 22,000 acres is actually underwater or surface areas of the water utilities lakes. We manage the boating, the recreational activities on their behalf on those bodies of water. So we want to make sure that we are providing for everybody's recreational needs. So when we report our acreage to Trust for Public Land or the National Recreation Park Association, we put that caveat in there that we do manage 26,000 acres, 22,000 acres, surface acres of water, and then 5,000 acres of park lands. Projects by funding source, again, the majority of our funding for the capital improvements that we're talking about today comes from GO bonds, 91%. We get somewhere in the neighborhood of 1% from the CIP program, and then we have 8% that's unfunded. Obviously, we use the unfunded just like Public Works does for those things that we don't anticipate. Overruns on cost of some of the GO projects, we have to get some more money into those activities. If something fails that we did not anticipate in the creation of the 2017 or even the 2007, we need to be able to step up and take care of those types of activities. Projects by locations, we've pretty well spread them out throughout the city. We've identified needs as far south as well, I'm drawing a blank. Which one? South Lakes, excuse me. And as far north as Lake Hefner. Some of the project improvements that are on the drawing board right now, we should be under construction fairly soon, is the Manuel Perez Park improvements. Most of you will remember that Manuel Perez was a Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. We used to recognize his valor on the north side of the river. We decided that it wasn't that imposing of a place to recognize the valor of somebody that lost their lives in the guarding of our Constitution and our way of life. So we moved it south of the river with the help of Councilmember White and Councilmember Meg Salyer. We met for a year with the neighbors on the south side of the river to talk about what kind of park they thought Manuel Perez should be. Our design consultants have recognized that emphasis, and this is a rendering of what the old Rose Circle area in Manuel Perez Park might look like after construction. The colored pavement in the center represents the blue field with the white stars of the actual Medal of Honor ribbon and that sort of thing. We're expanding it. We won't just recognize Manuel Perez at this park. We're anticipating recognizing the 30 recipients of the Medal of Honor here in the state of Oklahoma at this location. McKinley Park got a facelift. Again, we worked with the neighborhood in that area to come up with their ideas of what was needed at McKinley Park. Construction is done, the shelter is there, the new playground expansion is there. We even put in a little platform area so that the neighborhood could have actual performances in the park. And they have worked with our partner group that operates the McKinley building to actually put a mural, again, enhancing McKinley Park. Route 66 Park is one of those features that we're proud of all our projects, but this one will give us an opportunity to bring those people that are physically challenged in our community out to learn the American pastime of baseball. The baseball field that you see depicted in here, the whole infield and outfield is rubberized safety surfacing, like we are putting under our playgrounds, so that a child in a wheelchair running the bases, if catastrophically they fall, or a kid on crutches that bats the ball and is running first base, if they do take a tumble or a spill, it's resilient, they'll bounce off it. And we're already working with the Wounded Warriors and some of the veterans groups to try to bring baseball back to those military people that might have lost a limb or are now somewhat handicapped or in some form or measure handicapped. Again, giving them the opportunity to enjoy the American pastime. We have two skate elements that are under construction. One is at Shields Park on the south side. It's a small skate element where our recreation staff are lining up instructors, and we'll be able to teach safe skateboarding techniques and activities, inline skating, that sort of thing, at one of our recreation centers. We are adding a larger element to Stars and Stripes Park on the far north side of town. Again, believe it or not, skateboarding is still one of the fastest growing sports. Its close second, unusually, is pickleball. So we got different ends of the spectrums being requested of us, and Councilmember Cooper and Mayor Holt have just recently got a request for a skate park up in the northeast side of town. So we're looking at the possibility of that in the near future. Indoor facilities, our Melrose Gym got a facelift, brand new synthetic flooring for our basketball, volleyball program out at Melrose. Staff is getting real creative and making sure that we are branding our facilities, so when we're having sports activities in our facilities, people are taking selfies or photographs of their family members playing sports. We're getting the names of our parks involved in it as well. And of course, this is improvements to a linear park, again up in the northeast end of town, up in Woodland Park. Some of the seating areas, some of the resting plazas, again, a large-scale porch swing was installed as part of those trail improvements. Some of the ones that are on the drawing board and contracts have just been let is the Deep Fork trail system. Again, this is one of those missing segments to link different loops together so that in a matter of years you'll be able to circumnavigate by bicycle the complete city. This is one of those real hardcore ones. And then again, one of the park improvements going towards our health and wellness activities is the fitness courts. We have 4 under construction right now across the city. They'll be at Woodson, Wiley Post, Douglas Park, and Stars and Stripes Park. But we also have a donor that stepped up in the Boathouse District, so One in Regatta Park is under construction as well. So by the end of November, we will have 5 of these state-of-the-art free fitness areas in our parks. Our goal is to get to 10. We're working with the National Fitness Campaign out of San Francisco for a grand unveiling of us being their premier city for their National Fitness Campaign in the spring of 2019. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Doug?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We're going to present the Public Works CIP for you and bring that up on screen here in just 1 minute. I think as we presented in the past, as we look at Public Works, we begin on page 94. So if you have your booklet with you today, 94 is where we're starting. So what we do, I don't think this is probably going to be news for you, but if we've got those that are maybe watching this meeting, it's a kind of a friendly reminder. A lot of the things that we look at from Public Works are the items you see on the screen: street widening, resurfacing, bridges, drainage, facilities, traffic, and also street enhancements. The department is about 400 employees, and then we, of course, are broken into several divisions that support making these types of things happen all across the city. We use this infographic from time to time in a lot of our presentations just to kind of show the depth of all the things that we do. I think most already know, and it's not uncommon for us to explore the 620 square miles of Oklahoma City, but that includes over 3,500 miles of road. There's actually 8,000 lane miles, but 3,500 linear miles. We have over 50 miles of drainage channel, over 50,000 traffic control signs, 12,000 signals that are in over 750 signalized intersections. And so as we get ready to present the CIP, this is the area that we're covering for Oklahoma City. We align our CIP with the council priorities, and there's actually 3 of them. We look to develop a transportation system that works for all residents. 2 of those priorities are the percent of residents satisfied with the condition of city streets, and also assisting in the number of miles of trail and sidewalk constructed. The second council priority that we focus on is the uphold of high standards for all city services. And again, we look at the percentage of residents satisfied with the quality of city services and also the number of service requests that we respond to timely that are coming to the Action Center. And then the last one is maintaining a strong financial management system. Again, as we look at bond ratings, the deployment of the bond program, and now the Better Street, Safer City sales tax, these are all things that we are keen to as we move forward with project planning in Public Works. Better Street, Safer City is obviously our largest single capital program that's going to make up the majority of our CIP presentation today. It includes the 2017 general obligation bond at $967 million, but it also has the companion tax, the 27-month, $240 million program. Again, focused on streets, sidewalks, trails, and streetscapes are really the largest pieces of those programs as we move forward. So on the 2017 general obligation bond, nearly $500 million towards streets and sidewalks, and about $170 million in the sales tax as we move forward. When we break our plan down by year, this will show you as we go from 2019 to 2023, we are going to average over the next few short years about a $200 million program. That's with the combined tax that was passed last year as well. So when we look at fiscal year 19, it's $206 million. 2020 is $218 million. In 2021, when the sales tax no longer is being collected, we actually will start to decline to $182 million. And in 2022 and 2023, we still are in excess of $100 million, but those numbers then are fully supported back onto the bond program. And this is what that project works by type. So as I've mentioned, streets is our largest, with over 60% of our CIP focused on streets, but we do also support these other areas that you see on this graph. We've got the traffic at almost 18 million, bridges at 23, drainage, libraries, facilities. I'll show you a few facility projects that are part of our CIP that are non-MAPS projects, and then of course we also support police, fire, and parks. The total CIP, $821 million. This is by funding source, and so you'll see on the left-hand side, we've actually, the predominant funding source is the bond. We still have some 2007 also remaining. So if you combine those totals, it's about 73%, which is total bond dollars, but we also are supported by the drainage utility, the Better Street, Safer City sales tax, which you see on the right-hand side of the screen, and then also the Public Property Authority at the bottom. We've stacked this graph to show that increase that I've mentioned over the next 2 to 3 years with the sales tax. And so at the bottom, you have the bond totals. On the top, in the different color shade of purple, we have the sales tax. And again, you'll see that summary, $200 million for the next 2 years, then starting to slightly decline to where we then go back into the nearly $100 million annual program that's supported by the bond. So we're very busy right now. Obviously, with the implementation of projects citywide, I will show you some of the projects here on a map, and the mapping is also available online. So one of the things we continue to reinforce for those that are wanting to know more about Better Street, Safer City is to go to okc.gov, Better, Safer, and look at those projects. You can zoom into a map. The mayor has also published a list that shows a listing of those projects if that's more convenient. But again, those projects are active and they're all online for those to view. This is that map. It's not interactive today for our presentation purposes, but as we look at the bond issue and we look at the tax projects that have already been approved, you're going to find that they range across the entire city. We're in all wards, we're in all areas, and work is underway. Now, the work can't all be completed in 1 year, and that's why we're presenting the 5-year CIP today. But again, we're starting to see a lot of the work. Intersections in all wards. We're taking a lot of phone calls, some good, some bad. But obviously, as we have some inconveniences, we are resurfacing about 500 miles of street as a part of Better Street, Safer City. This is some of the widening projects that are also included. There are 18 projects in the bond issue that are widening. It's much less than what we've experienced in the past, but this is Southwest 29th, Rockwell to MacArthur. Moving on to some of the additional projects that we see, this is Cerro Road, 29th to 59th. This is a joint project with the Oklahoma OTA. So as we work with the Turnpike, and this is one of our 2017 bond projects, we had a city contribution to help make the widening of Cerro Road a possibility. This is Turtle Lake. As we look into residential resurfacing, the bond is not just our arterials, and the sales tax is not just arterial streets as well. We're in neighborhoods. This is Turtle Lake at Southeast 149th and Sooner. We're also at Northwest 36th and Walker. I'm starting to look at intersection improvements. And so as we enhance intersections with new capable handicap crosswalks, the countdown timers, upgrading some of the paint and a lot of the safety surfacing that is there, these projects are also included. Moving to 10th and Martin Luther King, we have a lot of intersections that look just like this. They've not been updated in a while. We do our best with the resources that we have, but as we go into an intersection with new funding, it's anticipated to modernize these again, and I think you'll see some significant changes once we're able to complete this project at this location. 63rd and Drexel, there's a number of drainage projects. We continue to maintain a drainage list as residents call us, most likely after a major rain event. We do categorize and prioritize those into 3 levels. We have a lot of street flooding that occurs in the city, which is our lowest priority. We have yard flooding, and then we have structural flooding, which is our highest. And so as we maintain that list of structural flooding complaints, we are prioritizing projects like Northwest 63rd and Drexel and others across the city to take care of those needs. This is another picture of the Drexel project that is also here. Again, as we look at bridge crossings, as we look at drainage facilities, there's drainage enhancements as a part of the CIP. I mentioned some of the facility projects, and so this is some of the non-MAPS work that's underway in the city. This was also discussed briefly on the agenda today. These are some of the improvements with the USA Softball Hall of Fame project. We've got several phases of work that are occurring currently, work proceeding through next year for completion in 2019-2020 with different parts of that facility. All of this is bond funded at this time, and so work is proceeding as planned. This is street widening projects and some of the after. So this is one of the after widening projects here on Western Avenue from 164th to 178th. These are some of the residential resurfacings after. Recalling that a lot of the residential streets, they're 20 and 30 plus years old. They have not seen resurfacing. The street conditions aren't always terrible, but we find that those streets are in need where they're starting to show signs of age and stress and cracks. So able to go into these neighborhoods and actually put in the new streets, also work on, in a lot of cases, some of the sidewalk needs and making them more walkable as well. These are some of the street enhancements. These are some of those new projects that we're going to start to see more of in the bond issue, and also the better streets. This happens to be the Western Avenue, Northwest 43rd Street. There was a street enhancement from 41st to 45th. We've recently completed additional work on Western Avenue from 18th to 23rd. We're working very closely with planning on new streetscape projects citywide as well. So you can anticipate seeing many more of those types of projects like this that are not just a simple resurfacing, but again, as we talk about complete streets, streets like this one as well. These are some additional enhancements on May Avenue, 10th to Reno, and not all streets are the same when we look at streetscapes. Some call for complete streets, others call for enhanced walkability, others include new lighting and other features like landscape. These are some of our drainage projects after Southwest 44th and May, doing channel repairs. So a lot of cases we're upgrading those concrete line channels to make sure that they're efficient in maintaining those areas of the city. Cimarron Road Bridge, and so we're also enhancing and updating these. It's hard to see in this photo, but we're using a lot of gabion basket wall construction. That's the wall that you see to the lower right-hand portion of this photo. There's a push for engineering. Not that all channels need to be concrete lined, but that a lot of natural materials are also being utilized in construction going forward to help minimize some of the environmental impacts, especially when we're handling a lot of those large amounts of water, but then also in residential areas as well. Completed facility projects also include the municipal courts. I know we had a grand opening with this, but again, a non-MAPS project that was a part of our bond, one that Public Works assisted on. Everybody's had an opportunity to either visit municipal courts or in the last few years the new police headquarters. But again, those are projects that Public Works support. And with that, I can answer any questions that you might have. We continue to appreciate the council's support for the programs. Again, I would just reiterate, a lot of the work is on the city's website at okc.gov. So if you have projects or get questions from constituents that are in your individual wards, there's the ability to zoom into a ward or just into a neighborhood, or actually just look at a project list and see all the different things that are happening across the city. Thank you. Yeah.
Any questions for Eric? Okay. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
I think you got one more.
We do. Chris Browning? It isn't Chris. Nathan's here. Chris is out of town.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm here to present, my name is Nathan Madwald. I'm with the Utilities Department, to present the 5-year CIP for utilities. Never mind. I think it's working. Erica. Sorry. Okay. I apologize. Utilities develop core business initiatives to align with the council priorities. Customer service, making sure that we're providing services to customers that they're used to receiving. We want to make sure we have a safe environment for our employees and for the public. Water supply, we're ensuring that we have adequate water to serve our customers now and into the future. Reliability and resiliency, we upgrade and manage our systems to make sure we're limiting service disruptions to our customers. Financial management, Aqua and OC have strong financial principles and currently have the highest bond ratings. And then regulatory compliance, we are making sure that we're complying with Department of Environmental Quality regulations and everything we're doing. So, of those, there's 3 categories that our capital program fits primarily in: water supply, reliability and resiliency, and regulatory compliance. So if you look at our program, it's $1.57 billion over the 5 years. Water is the largest component at $1.1 billion, and a lot of that's due to our water supply improvements that we're undertaking. Wastewater is about $429 million, and then solid waste is about $20 million over the 5 years. So if we go into each individual category, here's just a quick picture of where we were about 60 years ago with the first Atoka pipeline. This was the last stick that was laid in 1962 in Tupelo, Oklahoma, of the 100-mile, 60-inch pipeline that we built. So what we're doing in the capital program, you can see over there on the left is how much we're doing each year, and then on the right is the pie chart showing what type of improvements we're doing. water supply, as indicated, is a big component, about $766 million. Reliability and resiliency is $343 million, and then general type improvements are about $11 million. So if we look at our water supply, just to do a quick background of what our system is now. So you can see Oklahoma City there in the center, and the map generally spans from northwest Oklahoma to southeast Oklahoma. So Oklahoma City gets water from two sources generally: the North Canadian system from western Oklahoma, which consists of the North Canadian River, and then three reservoirs: Canton, Hefner, and Overholser. And then from the southeast system, we have three reservoirs: Stanley Draper, which gets water pumped to it from Atoka, and then also the McGee Creek Reservoir. And then there's a 100-mile existing 60-inch Atoka pipeline I mentioned, and the 13-mile McGee Creek pipeline. And then future improvements that we're working towards is getting additional water from the Kiamichi River Basin. So within this program, what we're looking at is the 72-inch pipeline building from the Atoka Reservoir, paralleling our existing 60 generally, up to Stanley Draper Reservoir. This is critical for us to get this done now because it allows us to get through drought periods when our system might be more challenged, and it allows us to move all of our existing water rights up to Oklahoma City. That pipeline we're currently in the process of procuring. Start of construction, we're looking in 2019 when we can bid our first phase, and then be bidding phases throughout the 5-year CIP, but hope to get construction done in 2025. And the total program for that, as I mentioned, is about $766 million. So now if we look at the stuff we're doing inside the city, so here's an overview of the city, obviously, where we're bringing in the new 72-inch pipeline into Stanley Draper Reservoir. And currently we have three main water treatment plants. On the north side, you have Hefner, Overholser in the center, and Draper on the southeast. Overholser was installed in the early 1900s and reached its end of its useful life. So we're going to be decommissioning that. And then we have the two main reservoirs, or excuse me, two main treatment plants, Hefner, which generally serves northwest Oklahoma City, and then Draper, which serves south and east. Those have fairly defined service areas, but there is a little bit blending depending on season. So one of our main components is to build upon our existing transmission infrastructure and interconnect those two systems to give us a little bit more resiliency should we have an impact on one of those systems. So if one of the plants went down, we'd be able to serve the majority of the city through the other. So going back, you can see over there in the blues, we have a lot of those pipelines in construction, and then that's the western interconnect component. We will also, outside the 5-year CIP, doing the eastern interconnect to further that improvement. We're also doing work at our, at two major booster stations, 8 and 15, and then you can see in yellow the replacement projects we're doing facility, and then we're also going to be doing work at the Overholser plant, figure out what's the best way for us to use that. That's also where our line maintenance facility is, so we're going to look to improve that there with an operations center. And then we're doing work at both Hefner and Draper as part of this capital plan. Talked a little bit about the interconnect, allows for increased resiliency for our system, and the growth of supply will be coming from the southeast, so we'll need to move more of that water to other parts of the city. At the plants, Draper, one of the big improvements we're doing is improving our finished water storage. And then at Hefner, we're upgrading chemical feed systems, working towards emergency power generation and other improvements, and making sure we're maintaining high levels of treatment. For main replacements, we're going to be doing about 8 miles a year within this 5-year, and then as we get out past some of these big capital improvements, we'll look to increase that and do more main replacements. So if we move on to the wastewater side of our capital plan, it's about $428 million. We have a peak there in 2020, and that's for an expansion of our South Canadian plant. Reliability and resiliency is about $300 million of the program. Regulatory just under $100 million, and then a little bit for general improvements. So if we look at where we're doing improvements throughout the city, you can see here our system with the drainage basin zone. We have 4 major wastewater treatment plants, 2 on the very north side, Deer Creek and Chisholm, and then in the northeast we have North Canadian, and then on the south, South Canadian. We're going to be doing work at several lift stations throughout the city in addition to our wastewater treatment plants, doing replacement projects developed based on work order histories as we do assessments of our system. And then we'll be doing a few relief main projects necessary to meet DEQ requirements. So So when we talk about the reliability and resiliency, one thing we didn't show on the previous map was our asset management program. We're improving on the way we're going to operate our system. We're going to look to be more proactive, and as that, we've got a couple components. Condition assessment. We'll be going out and assessing every piece of pipe in our system. It's going to be something we do over an 8-year period, but that'll give us actual in-field data to know that we're prioritizing our work appropriately and replacing what we need to. Survey and inventory, we'll go out and collect detailed information on where all our assets are, so that way our in-field people can manage our systems better. And then monitoring abatement, we'll look at where the flow is coming from and then look to eliminate that extraneous flow, so that way we're not treating it and not conveying it, which will reduce our cost for operation. Treatment plant upgrades, we're going to be doing projects at North Canadian, Deer Creek, and Chisholm for our resiliency. Those plants were constructed in the late 70s, early 80s, and so we'll need to be doing some improvements there to maintain our high levels of treatment. And then main replacements, we'll be doing about 16 miles per year. If we look at what we're doing as far as regulatory compliance, mentioned the South Canadian expansion. We need to increase the capacity of that due to flows coming to the plant, and then also new discharge limits based on stream modeling that was done by the DEQ. We're in design of that now. We're supposed to start construction in 2020 and be done by 2022. And then for the relief mains, we're doing those to reduce the likelihood of overflows in the North Canadian and South Canadian basins, and those are driven by our consent order. Onto the solid waste component of our capital plan. This one is $20 million over the 5 years, and it's fairly consistent over each year, just doing carts and equipment replacement, making sure we're doing collection. So a little bit smaller than our other two programs. One of the key things that we just completed as part of our solid waste program was the implementation of our new improved curbside recycling, where we did the large bins. We implemented that in summer 2018, serving urban customers, and look to evaluate that as growth and density occurs. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Talked about the interconnectivity between Hefner and Draper. Can you give the council some perspective on the timeline? And more importantly, when we get into drought conditions, what will that mean for Lake Hefner?
Yes. So the goal is, as our system grows and our demand grows, we're not getting any additional supply from the North Canadian system, so we'll look to balance our lakes and try to manage it to where we're moving more water from the southeast where it's plentiful, so that way we can conserve water in that lake to meet customer demands during higher demand periods, drought periods. So we'll use the Hefner water treatment plant more as kind of like a peaking plant.
Okay. And as far as the construction goes, between,
yes.
When is that probably going to be done?
It'll be a program that actually expands for the Eastern Connect component. It'll expand out past our current 5-year, but the Western Interconnect component, the lines we showed in blue, we're looking to get all of those. 5 of the 8 segments are in construction now. The remaining 3 will get in construction this fiscal year, and will be done hopefully before the beginning of 2022 fiscal year. So
2022?
Yeah. So
okay.
I beg your pardon, 2021. Excuse me.
2021.
Yes,
okay. And then those are for the whole thing. And the last section will be the northernmost section, right?
That will address the Western Interconnect component that we're looking to do. Yes, sir. Okay.
Can you remind me one more time, is that connection potable or non-potable?
Potable.
Potable, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Doug, do you want to summarize the schedule on that?
In 2 weeks, we'll return for adoption of the plan that it was presented again a number of meetings ago. I don't believe we're going to have any department reports. We've had other departments. If there are questions that you have about specific aspects of the plan, we'd be happy to bring back more information on that. We will have a recommendation from the Planning Commission as well in 2 weeks.
Next up is a report on the year-end performance report. This was brought to council a couple of weeks ago, but again, because of the time of that meeting, we did not do any presentations on it. So it's a big deal. We may spend a lot of time here, but with scooters and home sharing, but we got a lot of people out in the organization spending a lot of other time, most of their time on a lot of other priorities. And so with that, Doug's just going to hit some of the highlights on the year-end performance report.
Right. This format is very similar to what we produced with the budget book. It's in the same structure. And so I'm just going to kind of hit one example on page from Parks. Page 82, you can see this one kind of has a nice blend here. At the top of the page here, we've got the issue. Each department identifies issues that they're facing over the next 2 to 5 years, so their issue is creating new service areas is one of their issues. They've got a description of that, and then they've got the strategies that they're using to address that issue, as well as then their strategic results to measure progress against that issue. And again, you can see the data for FY16, their 17, 18 actuals. We have a target for what they attempted or what they were working towards in 18, and then their target for FY19. The section below that in white, each of these sections is there for each program within each department. So here's the administrative line of business, the executive leadership program for the Parks Department. The little key symbol, each program picks out a key measure that they are working towards. That's the primary measure for them. In executive leadership, they're looking at the number of measures achieved. And we can see, again, their performance across those various years. You'll also notice as we move down a little bit further to measure 771, the little symbol there that corresponds with the council priority to improve recreational opportunities in health and wellness. You can see at the bottom of the page, we've got each of the various council priorities, a little icon for those. If you're not sure which one is which, page 1 gives the description of each of the priorities. So these are the measures that have been called out during the council priority, and these are what departments are presenting on periodically as we bring those updates to you. This was also one of the presentations that was bumped when we had several long meetings, was on recreational opportunities in health and wellness. So again, the percent of citizens visiting a park or participating in a park program, you can see we've bumped up from 72% in FY16 to 81 in 17, held fairly steady there at 78 in FY18. That's from our annual citizen survey. And so we've got a goal to improve that to 80% in the coming year. So that's just kind of a quick overview of what's in the report. There's measures for each of the departments, and then within each department, the specific programs that they use to implement their programs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
All right. Thank you, Doug. Next up, we do have a sales and use tax report for October. And if you look at it, again, it's masked a little bit because of the increase of the sales tax rate. But the key number to take a look at on that is the year-to-date percent over projections. And we're 1.7% over projections for sales tax. So that's a solid number. That's very, very good. We're 18.3 overall, but again, that's masked because of the rate increase. But the real interesting number to me is on the other page, is on the use tax. If you take a look at the use tax, it's up 27.8% over projections. And that's because of additional collections on the Internet. The Internet collections go into the use tax. So if you wonder, are we getting collections on the Internet? The answer is yes. Are we getting everything on there? I'm not sure we're ever going to really know, but there's been a lot of steps to get more collections on the Internet. So we're very pleased with the progress that that's taken. And that's, a lot of things have happened. There's some state law that was passed. There was Nexus that was established with Amazon when they came to the state. There's also some changes regarding their third-party challenges. There was the South Dakota case that was heard in the Supreme Court this summer that changed some things for some others. And so amongst all those things are reflected in the increase in the Internet collections that are reflected in the use tax. Also, we have a report on EMSA, on the EMSA Care program that's out there. It's the third year in a row that the residential individual household portions of EMSA Care have increased. Now, there's also been growth in the system, so the percent of those systems has really become pretty flat at 72%. But that has stabilized, and what that has allowed us to do is we are projecting that at least through fiscal year 21, we'll be able to maintain the present rate of $3.65. So that's kind of stabilized, and so we feel pretty good about that. Who knows what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years down the road, but right now, it's in a pretty stable situation as we go forward. And with that, I'd be happy to answer questions on those or any other reports that are in the packet today.
Any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Couch. And that brings us to item 13, citizens to be heard. Is there anyone here? We have no one who signed up. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? All right, we will head into executive session to consider item 9V, and then we will return.